Catwoman, Lonely City, issue 1, Cliff Chiang, both writing and doing art on this issue. So this is one of these Black Label prestige books. It is a 50-pager, and it is its own continuity. It is a Catwoman. It's an old lady Selina, if you want to call
Basically,
it that. Yeah. Where she's out of prison after 10 years, and Harvey Dent, Two-Face, who's kind of reformed and has become the mayor of Gotham. Selina is kind of treated like this has-been criminal. No one kind of takes her seriously. But she is looking into something. It's teased that everyone kind of blames her for the death of Batman and Dick Grayson 10 years prior. That's why she's in prison. And we'll get into it, but like that's the basic setup of the world that we're in. But there's a lot of her revisiting her old place, walking through the city, kind of commenting how things have changed. It's it's a very focused book, and it feels like it's going to make a good trade to recommend as a complete story.
100%,
with the 3 or 4 issues that it is. I don't know how many chapters it is.
I think it's 3.
I think it's 3. Most of them seem to be 3 with another size, but yeah.
Yeah, it's because that kind of works out to roughly 6 issues, give or take, maybe just over.
Yeah. I guess the first thing to get out of the way is the art, just because it's the easy thing to talk about.
Gorgeous.
It is a very, very pretty book, and I think it works especially with a different colour. Nighttime is blues and purples, and it's all these flat, colours, flat shapes. But then you get to all the daytime stuff, and it's a lot more greens yellows and browns, and it really kind of plays with its colour palettes a lot. And whenever they're on whenever there's a rooftop or whatever, you get depending on if it's nighttime or daytime, you really get that backdrop, and it gives it this feeling to it. So the story starts with a sort of it is the sort of format where it's okay, we start off in an action scene, and it's now, and then we see her running from what I'll describe as bat cops. It's like armored cops with bat ears, because we're in this future.
To be fair, it's not just ears; it's like a full face thing. It's got a respirator sort of thing over the mouth, so it doesn't look goofy. If you say cops with bat ears, it sounds goofy.
Yeah, it looks more like, I don't know, like troopers you would get in like a sci-fi movie in the future. They just happen to have ears in their helmets.
Yeah.
But then it's 3 days ago, it's her being released from prison and getting out, seeing the world for the first time. She has to take the bus. There's a lot of little details dropped about how they have to have these certain types of IDs on them. They can only pay in G-Bucks or whatever it is. No one takes cash anymore.
The G-Bucks.
Yeah.
Sounds like Shroot Bucks.
A lot of Office references going on today, Matt.
Yeah.
And she has to break into her old place because she doesn't know what the code was. All of her old outfits are there, and she gets geared up. One of her cats is still there, so that's gonna have a heartwarming little beat when she runs into Monty. But a lot of this is showing that she's out of touch, that Gotham has changed so much, and she's from a previous era. And it does that thing where it uses TV news stuff to fill in a lot of the surrounding mythology of the world.
It's mostly done interviews with Harvey Dent, because the re-election is coming up.
Yeah, which I actually really, obviously it tells you a lot about how Harvey's different in the future, but what I really liked about this is that eventually later in the issue, when he shows up in person, it actually felt like it's such a huge deal because we'd seen 4 TV interviews with him up to that point. So him actually walking into a scene and actually being there felt like a big... So it did a really good job of treating that like it had a big bit of momentum with it.
Yeah.
I think that's really smart.
It's really interesting seeing the way Gotham's changed, because we learn that when Bruce died, he kind of basically all his money went to the city, and this is all the projects that it was earmarked to kind of fund. And crime is better than others.
Yeah, and crime is down. Things are generally better than they were before.
It seems very gentrified. Selina goes to get a coffee at Captain Cold Brew, Matt's new favorite DC location.
That's where that came from.
Yeah.
I didn't see it in any of the books that I read this week, and I was like,
Yeah, it's from this, and they're like, $20 for a latte and a scone, and she's like, screw this, and then they won't even take cash because it's G money only. She's got to go to some shitty little shop down the road that's it's $2.50. Here you go.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I wasn't sure if the joke was that this place was extortionate, or if this was just like, oh, in 10 years inflation's gotten us to the point where like a Starbucks in 10 years is going to be charging this.
No, I think it's gentrification combined with that they're only taking the essentially the cryptocurrency. Yeah.
So, but she goes to Wayne Manor. She sneaks in past the guards that are outside and goes to Bruce Wayne's tombstone, then sees Alfred's, and then looks over at Dick's, and it's like, oh man, this is like a really sad version of this world. And like the guard comes in, sort of hearing something, and she gets away in time. But when he finds like roses at all of the tombstones, it's a really kind of bittersweet, nice moment. And then she goes to see the Penguin, whose iceberg lounge is like evolved into this like international waters thing that's like outside of Gotham's jurisdiction.
Yeah. It's great. He's like, he runs all offshore accounts, and and he's one of those guys who does all the what is essentially money laundering.
Yeah,
but is technically legal. Right? He's a Cayman Island.
That's what she says. Is like most of what he's doing is actually completely legal. It's just all.
He's a Cayman Island essentially.
Yeah,
to himself.
Some shades of grey, perhaps.
It's very, very Danny DeVito Penguin, isn't it?
He's got a white tux on as well.
There it goes.
So which gives him a different look. He's got the white hair. Not that it tends to be like shown with like really nice thick hair or anything, but it's notably whiter than normal to make him look older here.
Yeah.
This is Old Man Penguin. And then it skips to like a day ago, because remember we started off and it went 3 days early, so now it's just 1 day ago. And one of the key things about the conversation with Penguin was that she's like, hey, I'll do some jobs, loan me some money and I'll pay you back. And he's like, you're kind of old now, like maybe you could like put on a skimpy Catwoman outfit and like do some like table service, but I don't believe with your knees and your back that you can still do the Catwoman thing, so I'm not trusting you. And then it skips to this next part of the timeline where it's nighttime. She's not put on a Catwoman suit, she's put on basically just like a hoodie and like stuff like this. It's like the low rent version, and she's essentially just trying to prove that she can still do this by sneaking into the to Gotham Central. But she's taking like pain pills. She's like commenting on how her back hurts and her knees hurt as she's like doing certain things. And she messes up, like she almost gets caught and has to just abandon the plan. When one of the cops comes back, like. And all of it, and she's doing like the Serenity thing, River, where she's like hiding up in the ceiling, with the arms and legs spread out.
She's like, I didn't think this through. Knees are not good for this anymore.
So yeah, so she kind of retreats, and it's this like downbeat moment for her. And I think that was like, I don't know if I like everything where the plot goes by the end. Some of it's just not as exciting as say Batman the Imposter from last week, which was just exceptional from start to finish.
I've not read it yet.
Make sure you do. Yeah, but it's constantly, there's more interviews with Harvey Dent. It's constantly teasing this big night that happened where Batman died, and then
Fool's Night or something.
Yeah, and Selina goes to see Barbara, and this is a continuity where Barbara is in a wheelchair, and she's actually the opposing candidate. The re-election we keep hearing about, she's the one who's actually running against Harvey Dent, and she doesn't want to talk to Selina. Like they're not on good terms, not at all, and like. Selina's there to ask a question about was it Orpheus? What I say?
Orpheus.
Yeah. And at this point we have no idea what she's talking about. Like, did I miss like this word being brought up earlier? Obviously, there's context given a little bit later.
And I am going to refer to the story of Orpheus when we get a little bit later.
Sure. But yeah, so but they're not in good terms. Babs talks about taking responsibility. Kind of blames Selina for what happened to some extent, and it's kind of an emotional beat. It's kind of sad, and there's a great page after that. Selina just walking through the city at night, and it's like a tracking shot on a camera. All these horizontal panels getting closer to her until the lights in the background are just the spots. They're so out of focus kind of idea. Really good pacing. And then she goes to this bar where she runs into Old Man Killer Croc, who's wearing a little old man hat. And
like a flat cap,
yeah, and he's so excited about like maybe doing some work with Selina, and he's like, hey, can I have a place to stay?
It's got a lot of weight. It's kind of weird to see Croc like this.
It's definitely a kind of a jokey version of what Croc could turn into.
Kind of like it though.
But
and this place is run by Matt Hunkel.
Yeah.
Sweet.
But this is when Harvey shows up to talk to Selina and kind of belittles her a little bit. Tells her to make sure she checks in with the parole officer and all that kind of stuff. And we get like a tease from Harvey in a phone call in a bit that he actually got her released from prison, presumably because he wants to use her as a ploy to make sure he gets reelected by, like, the Catwoman's at large and Harvey's going to stop her kind of thing, or whatever the exact tactic's going to be. But you definitely get that feeling. But basically, Selina's plan, she wants to break into the Batcave, which is heavily guarded, and she wants to do it on election day. And now, admittedly, when she says Batcave, I don't think she's speaking about the cave underneath the mansion. I think she's speaking about where the current like Bat police force is operating out of. I could be wrong on this.
It's left unclear intentionally. I think that I don't know which one they're gonna play it with.
Yeah, but the time to election day, so it does feel like the story is all building to like this one big, boiling point. And then we finally get back to the present day stuff, which is her on the rooftop in costume, running from the Bat cops, and some great panels of her running past the moon and all that.
That one full page.
Yeah.
Where she's cut the smoke down so that the Bat cops are shooting just nowhere near her. And she's just off running on the ledge with the moon. It's like a full page splash. Oh, absolutely gorgeous.
There's a lot of, like, what's funny is the narration more than anything made me think of Batman Year One a little bit. There's a lot of her being mad at herself and saying she's getting lucky reminds me a lot of Batman Year One, because that's a lot of what Bruce's narration is in that. So I kind of dug that. It's a way to kind of bookend things, but but this is her breaking back into Gotham Central. This is her like proving to herself she can do it, and she does. And she's there to get into the evidence room. She takes a box of evidence, and then when she looks through it on a rooftop, she goes through it. And which, by the way, actually on the word rooftop, I did kind of like earlier on. Babs used that word.
There is there's still she uses rooftops very derivatively here.
Yeah, but the way she uses rooftops and the way the word rooftops is bolded, it does kind of feel like Tom King, through all that rooftops talk and his Batman run, has turned it into a thing. It's turned it into a term that can be used to talk about their romance, is them on rooftops, which I kind of like, actually. It's
at
like
least for now, while it's fresh enough. Maybe in 5-10 years time that'll have faded, but right now it's shorthand. We all know what it means.
Yeah, so it's neat. But she's looking through this evidence box and she finds what looks like a batarang in there, as well as other items that she doesn't need. But this is a batarang that Batman handed to her as he was dying. We get a flashback to Fool's Night, and he says, as he's dying, he says, "Cave, bring me the Orpheus." And he kind of dies before he can really tell her what it is. He just says, "Save the city," and hands her this batarang, which I'm going to assume is maybe some sort of key. And maybe this implies that it is just the actual Batcave that she's going to break into. Maybe, it's just to get to that.
Clearly important, at least she thinks it is. Maybe the trick will be in the end it's not actually that important, but right now she believes it is.
What's funny is I'm thinking about what could this be that when she finally gets to it in the final issue, like something that Batman intended. Maybe because Batman knows he's dying, and this was always the post Batman world that he like not like a dead man's switch, but like in a bad way, but like in a good way, where he always planned for something to happen after his death. Maybe that's what Orpheus is.
Yeah. But, which right now, seemingly, the plan after he died was, here's all the money to the city, right?
Possibly, yeah.
What if there's something else?
So, very, very curious in what it's setting up. Police helicopter shows up though and shoots at her. It ends up setting off all these explosives that were rigged by the villains. And that's what actually kills Batman. And possibly others. But there's a sweet scene at the end where Babs gets a present from Selina, and it's just a box that contains her father's pipe, because Gordon is dead as well. Presumably died in the same night over the same event as everyone else. Yeah. Hence why it was in the same evidence box, you'd presume. And Babs just kind of gasps at it, and it's kind of a sweet moment. And yes, it's basically the end of the issue. The final page is just a tease that Two-Face is kind of behind this and is wanting Selina to help him get re-elected. So
yeah, particularly interested in what Orpheus is. Given that the story of Orpheus is it's a fable to not look back. Essentially, it's about looking forward and keep moving on and not like looking back at the past.
So one thing you can't do, or you lose.
Exactly. Yep. And this here, the idea of balancing, Orpheus, being that's the thing. And it's like, I don't quite understand what it's going to be, but it intrigues me just based on that connection.
Yeah, I mean, I think the themes of the story so far, it kind of feels like it's going to be about Selina obviously making amends and like clearing her name and all that, but certainly the idea that Batman maybe doesn't want there to be Bat stuff forever, and the idea that the police are using his image and all that kind of goes against maybe what he ultimately wanted, is that for them to move on in some capacity. And maybe whatever Orpheus is that she finds, maybe it is a plan or something to like destroy the image of Batman so that they can move away from it. This is definitely a very different future to what a lot of Bat future stories tend to do. This is doing a very yeah. It's its own thing. It's its own continuity. You can do what it wants, and it's one where it gives Selina kind of this. And it's kind of a heartwarming thing. This idea that Selina, after Bruce's death at some point, is going to have to be the one to kind of like do the final, like Bat thing, like be the one who initiates the final Batman ray of hope for the city.
The idea that everyone else is either dead or kind of given up hope, like Babs has.
Yeah, because it's the one person who was on the Shades of Grey to start with, who wasn't a hero to begin with, who is the one who is now going to fight to make sure the final lasting wish of Batman is upheld. There's something sweet about that, and full of redemption and all that stuff. So, I enjoyed it. It was a 50-page book. I mean, it was an easy read for 50 pages. Don't get me wrong. I said the same thing about Batman the Imposter last week, but it flew in for the length that it was. So, but I'm definitely in for issue 2. I had a good time. I definitely like the Imposter a bit more, but this is still really, really solid.
I think I am maybe glad that I haven't read the Imposter yet, because I haven't got that in my mind to compare it against. And not that I'm saying they're actually comparable books, because they don't seem to be in terms of style, but more just they're Bat Family books. They're alternate, Black Label books, Prestige.
That's basically it. They're both Bat Family books that are Prestige, but I mean, Batman Imposter's set in like Batman Year 3, and it's like, it's this young Batman story.
They're not really, again, from what I know, they're not really similar in story beats or anything like that,
no.
Or even tone. Just on the release format, essentially, is what makes you compare them, and that they're a week apart.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of glad I haven't read that yet, so that's not in my mind. If it is as good as you're saying, because I love this. I really, and I'm a sucker for Cliff Chiang anyway. But just the tone of this and the mood and just the pacing, and obviously all the art, just grabbed me. And I'm glad I wasn't comparing it to something else as I was reading it to ruin that experience.
Yeah, I like the tone of the book. I like the kind of this feeling of sadness and looking back at what happened to everyone.
Melancholy.
Yeah, I really dug that.
It's DC that they know what they're doing with these Prestige books. They want that. This is something you can stick on your bookshelf, and we will sell copies for the next 30 years. They're smart. They know what they're doing with that, and I can't blame them because they're damn good.
Anyway, what are you rating Catwoman?
I'm giving it a 9. I really love this book.
I don't think I'm going to go quite as high. I'm going to go 8.5, but it is excellent. It's really good. And it has been the highest rated thing I've done so far this week. So, check it out. I would recommend it.